Welcome to you all. My name is Andrew Chung. I am the artistic producer of London Symphonia, and welcome to Behind the Music. So today I've got with us, we've got Joe Lanza, our esteemed concertmaster. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Andrew.
And we've also got Suzie LeBlanc, our guest singer for this wonderful concert. Hello, Suzie.
Hello, Andrew. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Suzie.
All right, this is great. So I'm going to, I have to read a little bit of your bio, Suzie, but
Make it small.
I'll try a little bit, but you've done so many interesting things. I just want people to understand the breadth of your career and just in a minute or two. Okay, so here we go. Suzie LeBlanc is a world-renowned interdisciplinary artist. Curious, nuanced, and passionate, she sings and conducts to discover and share the beauty and emotional charge of music. Known for her interpretation of baroque, classical, contemporary, and Acadian works, she's acclaimed for her eclectic and original projects. After being in Europe for 12 years, working with top early music ensembles, she returned to Canada in the year 2000, singing the role of Poppaea in Monteverdi's The Coronation of Poppaea, with l'Opéra de Montréal, conducted by Yannick Nézet-Séguin. Suzie and Yannick then recorded a disc of Mozart Lieder. Over the years, Suzie has collaborated with several ensembles in Europe and North America and produced her own projects. A return to her Acadian roots gave birth to recordings La Mère Jolie, Tout passe, and La Veille de Noël. She's interested in women's music, particularly sacred music, in the convents of the 17th century. Moved by the migrations of her Acadian ancestors following the Great Expulsion of 1755, she was keen to work with composer Jerome Blay on a multimedia show called Mouvance in 2019. And this production unites the words of 13 contemporary Acadian poets to Blay's original music for soprano, clarinet, cello, electric guitar, and percussion. Suzie's been appointed to the Order of Canada in 2015. She's earned 4 honorary doctorates for a contribution to early music and Acadian culture. We've got a Grammy Award winner, Juno Award winner, and she began her most recent role as ED and Artistic Director of Early Music Vancouver in January 2021. That's as short as I could make it because there's a lot of the great stuff you've done. Oh, and oh my goodness, are we pleased to have you on this program? So our program is called The Long Way Home. And I think I've had 2 of your CDs, La Mère Jolie and Tout passe, as 2 of my favorites for many years now. And I was speaking with Joe when we were thinking about a great Canadian soprano that we could have to perform some early music with us, and your name was just came right out at the top there. So we're so pleased. We had to postpone this concert once already, and here we go. We're going to launch into it on May 28th. So pleased. Take me back to if you don't mind, to the making of these terrific albums, La Mère Jolie and Tout passe. The years, I thought they were 2007 for one of them, and the other
7 or 8.
Yep.
Yeah, that's when it all began in a way. And it was late in my career in a sense. I mean, I sang for so many years before I got interested in the Acadian music. It's not that I wasn't interested, but I felt that I'd been, doing classical early music all my life, and that other people did this traditional music from Acadie much better than I. And I, in the same way that I'm not fond of classical singers suddenly decided they're going to do a jazz album, I didn't want to reinvent myself as a folk singer and do a bad job of it. So it took a very long time for me to be interested in it, even though I liked the music from afar. But around that time, 2004, I think it was, a friend of mine brought me bag of Acadian songs, and I went to the piano and I started playing them. And maybe I was just getting melancholic about Acadia, I'm not sure, but it came at the right time. And I was really moved by the songs. I was moved by the emotions, the text, and everything. And then I realized that I was kind of in love with the tunes because they were so relatable to me, because they originated in the medieval or Renaissance or 17th and 19th century times, depending on how long they've existed. So I recognized, and of course, being the early music nerd that I am, I harmonized them in an early music way at the piano. That's all I knew how to do. I just, that's my language. So as I did that, they started to feel not as foreign as I had thought, folk music was done by folk musicians. I guess I started to make them a little bit more my own. And then I decided that if I got together some people that were really good at folk music, but also versed in early music in a classical early music way, the European music that I grew up with, that could fit, and that somehow together we could just create something that still had a closeness to what I know well, which is early music, and my ancestry at the same time. So kind of got all the right people there. David Greenberg, David McGuinness, Sylvain Bergeron on lute, and Betsy McMillan on gamba, and Chris Norman on flute, and getting all those great people in one room who, funnily enough, tell if I'm going on too much, but funnily enough, we represented all of the different cultures that existed in the 17th century in, quote, Acadia. And it was never a country, but the region of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, called Acadia. So we had, a Scotsman, David McGuinness. We had a Cape Breton fiddler, David Greenberg. We had a Québécois, Sylvain Bergeron, and we had Betsy McMillan, whose origins are English. So we kind of, and me, Acadian. So we kind of had like the representatives of the cultures that were existing then, by fluke, really. We didn't really try for that, but it was kind of so nice to see that here we are reunited again. And so we did, two albums, a little bit different personnel on each, but mostly the same team. And I guess then I really realized that I could own that music, and I was kind of grateful to Joanne Goyette, who's the director of Atma, who had been pushing me to do that for years until I finally said yes, and been enjoying it ever since.
We're all grateful.
It's just such a unique sound, and I think there's a few interesting distinctions for me. So first of all, you don't identify yourself as a folk singer. I think in some of our early marketing stuff we had there, okay, how do we characterize what you're going to do and what you do? And we had like, okay, Suzie LeBlanc, folk singer. Like, no, wait, she's not a folk singer. That's not really what I think of as a folk singer. But you bring this early music aesthetic and sound, and that's what's in your ears, and that's what you worked for so many years. And then you're bringing that to music that really sits on the same timeline, does it not? Like, it is 250 years old, and it's just hard to describe, but it's irresistible. The music's irresistible, and being a violinist, when I listened to David Greenberg play on that, with the humor and the fun, that kind of almost like a joking kind of style, but then there's that early music aesthetic and that clean and the purity and the beauty, and the same thing that you do with your voice. It's just an irresistible combination. I can only imagine what that felt like, and I didn't realize that the other people who you were working with also had roots in the region and the Acadian story. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
so interesting.
Yeah.
And there is a little bit of common ground there, because it's a clear, somewhat spoken style.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
and I think that's where the bridge across. It's not such a long distance.
Indeed. Indeed, it's all about words and storytelling. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And who knows really how they sang those songs back then, right?
And probably each singer made it a different song, like very individual, I'm sure. But who knows? I think maybe what you mean is like, also, I've been asking myself that question. Did they sing them a cappella? Did they have a violin with them? And they had violins, they had keyboards, they had flutes, they had viols. But was that used for sacred music in the church? Obviously, the violin would have been used in the parties for sure to do tunes so people could dance. But how did they perform songs? God knows, probably different ways, probably many, many different ways.
Yeah. And you also went over another point there, is that the songs as presented to you would have been just the melody line and words and no harmony attached. So that's part of what that journey was for you and the musicians you work with. Okay, like, what are you going to choose? What are you going to put with it? What harmonies are you going to put with it? What chords are you going to put with it? Right?
Yeah. Well, that's the fun part. That's the really creative part. And I mean, I was blessed by who I was working with. I mean, sometimes I would do my own little, chord things, and then I'd present to, David McGuinness on a napkin, kind of some chord progression. And then, of course, he'd work on that and he'd embellish it and make it so much better. And then Betsy would chime in and do something, and then Sylvia would suggest something. It was very collaborative. Everybody did. And of course, David Greenberg is an amazing improviser, and he was just brilliant at picking out, a possible counter melody or just embellishing the melody that I was singing. But Chris Norman as well, they're both just excellent improvisers and arrangers as well. So they would just create this music, and it's kind of a sad thing about it is that I get asked very, very often by people. I get emails, can I send them the scores because they would like to do them with a choir, or you know and I do not have any. I do have scraps of paper, little notes with little chords underneath them, and we have sort of chord charts, but it's words with, just like a pop song would have. We really don't have arrangement. We have nothing written down. So maybe someday that's a project for somebody, but I don't.
You're
Yeah.
not volunteering yourself.
I'm not. I have no time right now, but yeah.
Of course not. Of course not. So how many of these songs are we going to hear as part of our concert?
Well, okay, this is interesting. So we're not hearing a ton of them, but that doesn't stop people from getting the recordings and listening to them. But we are doing Avec un avocat, which is a really fun song that is going to be arranged for London Symphonia. And the interesting is we're doing something that I also really was important to me to do, which you alluded to, which is the project that was the multimedia project Mouvance that I created with Jérôme Blais in 2019, and we're doing one song from that project on a poem by Herménégilde Chiasson, who's an artist and who was also the Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick, so a very important character and poet, and that whole project was a reflection on the displacement and the exile. It's a reflection on that in a very universal way, but it's reflecting from the texts of these contemporary Acadian poets that we chose. So I really wanted to do an excerpt of that because what's really fascinating is that even though the exile of the Acadians from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick was in 1755, where the diaspora happened and they were spread to different corners of Europe and the States. Still now, 250 years later or more, you find echoes of words like migration and displacement and déracinement, uprooting, in the poetry of people that aren't even talking about that theme. It's just they could be talking about love or about gardening, and those words come up. We thought that was just amazing that it's in the subconscious of people to that degree. And so it's important to realize how much that has infiltrated the lives of Acadians till today, and that we still carry somehow in ourselves the memory of that migration, that journey, that exile, and that we can do very creative things with it, but it's still very, very much part of the DNA in a way. So so we're doing an excerpt of that project. What else are we doing, Joe? Am I having a blank here?
Um,
Oh, the Valse d'Acadien.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, you
yeah.
can speak about that.
I messed around with that one a little bit. I mean, that's a perfect example of what Suzie was talking about, where I said, "What have you got?" And she sent me about 10 bars of music, just a melody. And that's all there was. So I have to admit, I was very strongly influenced by what your group improvised for that recording. But we have slightly different instrumentation. And so I took a slightly more fiddly direction with it, because I've got two violins playing. So, and there'll be a little surprise. Somebody's going to step into a role in that song that they don't normally occupy. And I won't give that away. And we'll have some on the spot inspiration percussion.
Wow, I can't wait to hear that.
Uh-huh.
So
So,
Joe, what like we could have tried to develop a whole program around the Acadian story and the music. So, but we went in a bit of a different direction. And do you want to talk a little bit about the other composers on this program?
well, I suggested to Suzie, I wonder if we could kind of tell the story of the diaspora using music of the time. So we did it kind of broadly. We chose some French music that was around at that time, and popular and famous, or people that were related to composers who were writing popular and famous stuff at court. And then we went to England for the same thing. And then we looked at the diaspora idea and we thought, Acadians on the move, musicians on the move. And we decided to feature a very interesting musician who left Italy and spent most of his career in England and Ireland.
Right.
And
this is Francesco Gemignani, right?
Gemignani. And what's very interesting about the music that we chose here is this is not music that most people know from Gemignani. And it has a kind of 18th century Celtic quality to it,
Very
which
much.
I love. It's really endearing. There's a little bit of fiddle music. There's a couple of really beautiful and surprising songs that we chose. So, and then we moved to Acadian music, and we also have another surprise there. We have a composer who left the Caribbean, where some Acadians wound up, and headed back to Europe, which is something that some of the Acadians did.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's Boulogne?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So we've got a wonderful variety. And, you know, another thing that I really like about this program is, you know, it's funny because when Andrew and I first came up with this idea of doing a program with you, Suzie, we thought we would have an orchestra. And the orchestra idea sort of got lost in the postponements, and it came back as a chamber ensemble. So we've really only got 12 musicians. And that idea of collaboration and working closely together with a small number of musicians will be reprised here in this London Sinfonia program. So, and I love to work that way. And, you know, it's nice for me, if it had been an orchestral show, I would have been leading the orchestra. Right. But this is a little bit different because it's more like chamber music. So I don't feel it's exactly the same role. It's, you know, I might give a gesture to get things started. Right. But then it's a lot more sharing at an more intimate level, where everybody has input and everybody is influencing everybody else second by second as we play and Suzie sings.
And I think that part of the, part of one of the many sub themes of this concert is it's a focus on early music, which is not something that London Symphony does all the time, but it's certainly something that we were very intentional about developing an aesthetic for. And Suzie, you've just taken this new role with Early Music Vancouver in 2021. I'm just wondering how that's all going. Like, and as your role with this dual role, how broad is your net when you think early music? Like, how do you define that?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Someone once said early music is whatever was composed until yesterday, which is very broad, of course. But, most people would think of early music as we know it, as music from European traditions from the 11th to the 18th century. I mean, that's kind of broadly what people assume that have been doing early music that are of my generation. We grew up with this idea that that was early music, but it's not that anymore. And it's changed so much, and it's exciting because all of the oral traditions that are passed down from medieval times, or like Indian classical singing, Persian classical music, what else, Scandinavian music. I mean, so much music is passed down orally instead of being written down, and it means that it's still alive today. It's just tradition, and that is early music because it has roots in centuries ago. So there's also something that I really love to do with my life. I've done it all my life as a singer, and I can do it now as the artistic director of Early Music Vancouver, is to put forth the voices of people that were left behind or forgotten, ignored. So, for instance, women composers, as you've mentioned in that intro, is an interest of mine. Nuns who were writing anonymously. I have another friend who says everything that's anonymous must have been by a woman. So, but it's so nice to put these voices that have been kind of just collecting dust in libraries, and nobody's really heard of these names. There's also sometimes, you were describing, French music that we're doing for this concert in London. And, we know a few names by French composers, and then there's a myriad of other ones that we don't know that were equally fantastic musicians. Not all of them, but many of them were. So finding the jewels and making sure that people hear them is something that is delightful to do. And commissioning new composers to write for old instruments is also something we do. Like you say, casting the net wide as your imagination can go, and as wide as your financial means can go, and it's just a joy. There's so much to discover still in these centuries of music, and then in all these different cultures today that we can access so much more easily. And then with the live streams and the online concerts, I mean, you can have a concert that you might not be able to bring the group over here, but you can bring the film over here. So it's endless. I'm sure you're finding all of a sudden our things can be seen by the entire world, and we can see things that are happening on the other side of the world. And it's almost overwhelming, but it is exciting.
Yeah, the doors are open so wide, isn't it? And I've been keeping a close eye on your programming, and it's really fabulous stuff. Wow.
Wait, can I do this?
Of course you can do
This is
that.
our summer festival. It's just come out. So, and it's actually, guess what? It's got Scottish Baroque music, and David Greenberg and David McGuinness are coming as artists in residence. So
Sign me up.
Nice.
okay.
I'll check it out for sure. But yeah, Early Music Vancouver, all you people out there, there's some really great programming happening, and Suzie's at the heart of it. So Joe, in the last 2 minutes that we've got here, when you think early music, and I know that this has been a lifelong passion for you, what can people expect? How do we as an orchestra, as an ensemble, approach this stuff differently when we put our early music hats on?
Freedom of gesture. That's a big one for me.
Yep. And wait, by that you mean what?
It means that it has to lift off the page in a very vibrant way, straight from the heart, from the gut, and also it has to dance.
Mm-hmm.
And so almost all of the musical motifs that we find in Baroque music are dance motifs. They come in various sizes and shapes, but that means there's a feeling of a strong beat and a light beat. And it pervades the music and gives it a kind of bounce and a kind of contrast, a rhythmic contrast that's very visceral. Mm-hmm. So that's something
so it's, and you're a very demonstrative player, and the way that you approach this early music, you get that internal pulse, you get that internal intention or the affect of what we want to achieve in that little dance movement. Might be short, fleeting, 2 minutes or whatever.
There's going to be a lot of that, actually. The French stuff is going to be super colorful. Mm-hmm. The English stuff has harmonies to die for. The Italian stuff is passionate. And the Acadian stuff is fun. And also, in particular, Il va sans dire, it's very, very expressive, personal. This is just a bucket list program for me. I'm so excited about it.
Me too. That's it for today. I think we've managed not to give away too much of this program. We've kind of hinted around the corners, but dove in a little bit on some really interesting topics. So thank you so much, Suzie, for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, Joe, as always, for what you bring to these programs and just this amazing commitment and creativity. Really looking forward to this one. So this is our concert, The Long Way Home, and it's May 28th, our season finale, we could call it. And this will be performed live from First St. Andrew's Church in London, Ontario, and live streamed around the globe. Okay, till later. Thank you so much to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.